Hey everybody, I'm here with Townsend Bell. We are in a brand new IS 500. Tell me about this car, this particular car.
Well, it's the all-new IS chassis, which we launched last June right here in Dallas, was the worldwide launch. And it had the tried and true V6, IS 350. That's what I drive every day back in LA. And the engineers at Lexus and all the great folks here at corporate headquarters decided, you know, what if we dropped in the RCF motor? What would happen? And sometimes at big car companies, they think about it, but they never do it. And what's really cool about Lexus these days is there's a performance edge to the brand and an attitude that I find pretty exciting. And for them to drop in the big 5-liter V8 and normally aspirated, it makes a ton of torque in this little mid-sized luxury sedan is just a ton of fun to drive. I've been pounding it around the racetrack. You went for a ride.
Yes, yeah, and, we just took a hot lap.
it just loves to be driven hard.
When you say it loves to be driven hard, how does it feel different from previous cars or other cars that you've driven?
Well, sometimes I've done a lot of these kind of track events with road going cars, and sometimes you come out on a hot day like it is here in Texas and you start pounding away, and all of a sudden, lap after lap, the tires not too happy, the brakes not too happy, sometimes the transmission's not too happy. But I have been driving 10/10ths with every passenger I've had. I mean, we've been sideways. I'm throwing it into brake zones. We're pounding curbs, and it's the same on the 20th lap as it was on the first lap. And to me, that's remarkable. That says that all of the Lexus engineers back in Shimeyama at the new test track have put this car through its paces, and they've served up something that I think's pretty remarkable.
And you've got a lot of experience. I mean, you know what you're talking about. You've been around the lap a few times. So what do you like? What's your schedule like right now? You get to do some racing. You get to do a lot of commentating.
I raced with the team with the Lexus team the last 2 seasons, and then just Daytona this year. I was the 4th driver at the 24 Hours at Daytona. And then a lot of my years spent working for NBC Sports as a commentator. So I'm the analyst for the IndyCar races, including the Indy 500, which just happened on Sunday, which was amazing. And then I also step in for some of the longer IMSA races, like Watkins Glen 6 hours, 12 hours of Sebring, Petite Le Mans. So I'm lucky. I mean, between doing these kind of projects with Lexus and getting to go to all the races with NBC, we're having a good time.
What does it feel like commentating versus being behind the wheel?
If you noticed, as my passenger earlier, there's some pent-up aggression in my driving that
only little,
that reflects the fact that I'm not racing maybe as much as I'd like these days, but this is a great outlet for it. I think as an analyst, it's allowed me to do just that, to analyze kind of the big picture of how races play out a little bit more. Also analyze the psyche of the drivers, and I made this comment in the pre-race for the Indy 500 on Sunday that especially at Indianapolis, patience and urgency are both applied. And it's understanding the moments in the race that require patience and the moments in the race that require urgency. And that's the magic formula. And I think as an analyst, what I've really enjoyed is being able to look and study and watch races in a way that I never did as a driver. Because as a driver, you're sort of in the trenches. You're in your world. You're worried about setup, optimizing everything with your team. And in a way, I think if I went back and actually raced now, it probably helps me tremendously because I've had this global view of the races for the last 10 years that I didn't have prior as a young driver, because I was certainly the young raging bull, and I could definitely benefit from what I've learned over the last decade.
Do you think most young racers are raging bulls?
I think so. I think by our nature, but the great ones, I think, understand that view, understand the balance of patience and urgency, and really understand the character of a race in terms of a race win, and what that cadence needs to be like to get to the promised land, which is what it's all about.
What racers do you like to emulate, or do you admire?
Well, Scott Dixon is, he's top of the list. And I don't care if you're a NASCAR fan, an IndyCar fan, a Formula One fan. If you look at the way Scott Dixon has achieved what he's achieved in an era of IndyCar racing where the equipment is by and large equal. So they're all in the same chassis. There's 2 engine manufacturers that are pretty equalized. The tires are consistent. It's a little different than F1, a little different than NASCAR, where there's a greater separation of equipment quality among the teams. In IndyCar, there's great parity right now. And if you look at his 6 championships, he's certainly in the hunt for a 7th this year. And in terms of his race mentality, to me, is the strongest in the sport. I think you look at Lewis Hamilton ridiculously talented, and his achievements are, the best ever. So it's fun to watch him. But I like the way Scott manages his races, his championship runs, and if you look at the run he's had with Chip Ganassi Racing, that consistency, almost 20 years with the same organization is pretty special.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I know the world just recently lost Bobby Unser, one of the greats, and I was curious to know what you think about what is it like being in the booth after him, and how is it different? Do you feel like people ever compare you?
I have heard fans reference the fact that they like some of the tension, the authentic tension between me and Paul Tracy, that were 2, pretty different characters. And we're not afraid to call each other out. And what's crazy is that when I was a kid, certainly as a young teenager, Paul Tracy was my hero. I mean, I worshiped that guy, and because he was a charging bull, he was a take no prisoners, checkers or wreckers type racer, and I loved the way he raced, and so we've become good friends. But also I feel like I really understand him, and despite him being my childhood hero, I have no problem arguing with him, calling him out if I think he's wrong. And kind of poking them, for fun on occasion. And we just have a blast. I mean, we really are up there, super passionate about what we're watching and what we're analyzing. But it also feels like if we were just at his house sitting around watching a race, I don't think things would be much different. And I think that's why Bobby Unser and Sam Posey were so successful, is that it's unfiltered. It just kind of flows. It's stream of consciousness that I think the fans have enjoyed. And Bobby, though, there's no comparison. I mean, he was the most candid, blunt, sort of just fiercely sharp commentator, I think, in the history of racing. And you go back and watch some of those IndyCar races from the 80s in his era, and it's just broadcast gold, really.
It is, and you're pretty blunt as well. But TV has changed as well, and some of the tone, right? Yeah, no, we have to. We're tethered a little bit more than they were back then, but we have fun with it, and we know that we cater to a pretty broad spectrum, because the group of fans that might watch the St. Pete Grand Prix is a subset of the Indy 500 audience. And one of the broadcasters that I really admire most is Chris Collinsworth, because I feel like when I watch Sunday Night Football, I never played football growing up. I love the sport, but I never played. I'm not an expert on any level. I'm just a fan, but I don't feel like Chris talks down to me. He's not trying to sugarcoat it or create like kindergarten for football for me. Right.
He might say things that I don't necessarily understand, but I can go figure it out and research it. And I really like his delivery, and so I've never tried to emulate that, but that's somebody that I admire a lot in the sport of football that I don't really know that much about. And I like to think that in the racing world, even for the Indy 500, we don't candy coat it too much. And I think fans appreciate that we're talking to them on a level set.
I think that's true, and I think that matches really well with that audience. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Yep.
So what's next for you, Townsend?
We have the Detroit Grand Prix in 2 weeks, doubleheader up there, and then we go straight to Road America. So the fun just keeps keeps getting better. I mean, those are two great events, and going to Road America in June is one of the best places in the country that time of year. So a great racetrack, and IndyCars just seems to be on a great trajectory of momentum, and the racing's been fierce. The championship's going to be super tight, and we have this wonderful storyline of ultra talented young guns that have come into the sport, and veterans like Castroneves and Dixon and Kanaan that are totally determined to whoop the kids, and we're seeing it with some regularity, and the kids are also doing a great job with Colton Herta, Pato Award, Rinus VK, and a number of new names that are really, really talented. They don't have all the knowledge yet, but they have every bit of talent, and they're very aggressive and very hungry for success.
Not yet, and to your point earlier about how you can now see, as an analyst, you can kind of see the bird's eye view.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell these young bulls in the ring? What's your advice to them?
They're each different. And occasionally I'll try to drop a little nugget, here or there. But I also,
if they'll listen.
I also remember being that age, and so I know that all they care about is winning. And so if I see something that I think could help them achieve their goal, I know that they might be open to it. But the advice is different, in one case, one of the young guns, I talked to him recently about just kind of looking after his rear tires. Another one has no oval experience, so I've been talking to him a little bit about the technique for restarts on ovals and things like that. But it mostly comes in the form of questions, rather than, hey, I'm going to tell you how to do what you're obviously very good at already. But it's more knowledge-based as opposed to driving fast. They don't need help driving fast, but sometimes knowledge can help.
Sounds like parenting a teenager.
Yeah, I've got two of those. Yeah.
I have an 11-year-old. He's coming up.
And I've seen how much my teenagers listen to others more than they do dad. So,
Yep.
You know how that is.
Yes, I do. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate the time. Townsend Bell, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe we'll go for another hot lap.
Let's do it.
See you later.